Hello, everyone, and welcome to Grand Cruise Astrology. Today's video, I'm going to talk about the larger aspects that are going to have a little bit longer time horizon than I would normally look at in these videos. But there's some big changes coming up, and some of them have already been initiated in the sky. So we'll go ahead and look at that and you know, bring a little bit of hope into the conversation. As I've been saying since 2020, I've been sort of telling people about what's coming in 2025 and in 2026 and 7. And, it was astrologically going to be a bumpy road until we got to 25, 6, and 7. And so just looking at the outer planets, the big hitters, and how they're lining up, we're having better conversations here coming in 25, 26, and 27. So I want to talk about that a little bit and yeah, just maybe give a little insight into what to expect. So this chart that we're looking at right now is for this is today, November 30th at noon, Mount Vernon, Washington. And so this is where we're at currently, but I'm going to take a look at the outer planets that move very slowly, and we'll kind of track them through time a little bit. I don't have any other charts prepared, but I can talk about it and show you what's happening. As we sit right now, we have a nice little semi-grand trine in the sky. It's a little bit out of sign. Actually, yeah, it's out of sign at the moment, but it's still kind of a nice harmonious energy for the holidays. So anyway, let's get started. Let's look at the. We've haven't done a video in a while, but as some of you know, Pluto has been back and forth through the end of Capricorn and Aquarius, in the beginning of Aquarius. Pluto moves a couple degrees a year, it doesn't move very fast. So it's just kind of been hanging out along that cusp for a couple of years now. It's just been at the end of Capricorn and, touching its toe into Aquarius and, flirting with that change. Well, now ever since mid-November, we've had Pluto go into Aquarius. So it is officially in Aquarius proper and will be moving forward in Aquarius. So that energy is new. Let's see, we had Pluto go into Capricorn. Let me just give you an exact time here. That would have been in 2008. It would have first touched in there right around February, late January, February 2028. I'm sorry, 2008. Right around the time of the financial crisis. And that's, of course, Capricorn is involved with all of that. It rules structures, institutions, the sort of the old guard, right? So when Pluto went through there, it made a pretty deep transformation about how we relate to these institutions, how we relate to the past. Uh, you know, because Capricorn, it does represent traditions and past and doing it the way we've always done it, kind of thing, and what is tried and true. And so here we are now with Pluto going into Aquarius, and we can look back on Capricorn and what we take with us is what we keep. What we take with us from the past is what we keep and carry forward collectively, right? Certainly, a lot of things have changed. A lot of institutions have been wrecked, and a lot of statues have been toppled. But what we have now going forward is, a more workable version for the future. Now that we have Pluto and Aquarius. Pluto and Aquarius, Pluto is a planet of transformation, very deep transformation. Um, like a phoenix rising from the ashes. It's death and rebirth. It's creative destruction. It's very intense. It's very thorough. Has a lot to do with power. Um, has a lot to do with endings and death, but new beginnings to go with that. It is transformational. And it really relies on integrity. That which is out of alignment of integrity, Pluto hits hard and it doesn't let up. So Pluto going into Aquarius is going to bring power and prominence to Aquarian things. We're talking about fixed air energy. We're talking about um, technology. We're also talking about how we um, relate to each other as a collective, is in terms of groups, networking beyond the neighborhood, but globally, right? This is a very Aquarius is a very, very humanitarian type energy. So when Pluto goes through here, we take a hard, close look at how we go about our relatings to ourselves in a humanitarian sense globally to one another, collectively to one another. Um, Pluto will bring prominence to that. There will be a need for it, but there will also be a transformation of it. So it's kind of like the things that we like and love about Aquarius are going to come into prominence and going to come into the forefront and be in positions of power and prominence, but at the same time, it's going to be transformed, and we either transform with it or we get transformed by it, right? Um, so anyway, when having personal planets in Aquarius with Pluto going over it, it's kind of it's a very all or nothing energy. It's very much um, you embrace the power that's brought to you and put before you and given to you, and you do it in a way that is of integrity, or it takes power over you and it will use you. And it can be, it's this is not something to run from, it's something to embrace. So anyway, but Pluto is going to an Aquarius, and what I like about this, what I've seen for a while here is very advantageous, is that we also have other planets coming into harmonious aspect. In 2025, Neptune is going to dip its toe into the sign of Aries, right? It's going to be at 0 degrees Aries. Let's see, just to be exact here, let me get a exact timing on that. So Neptune is going to be going to Aries once we get into April 2025. It'll go to 2 degrees before it goes retrograde, and by late October it'll dip itself back into the end of Pisces for a couple of months there. Well, for through till early 2026. So for a lot of the year, Neptune is going to be in Aries. From April through till October. Um, and Neptune, it's going to also be in good aspect to Pluto, like I said. So there's some harmony here. Now, Neptune is the planet of um, sort of boundarylessness, universal, altruistic, unconditional love and appreciation for all, for source, for spirit. It has a very spiritual bend to it. It also, you know, it, it's going to be in Aries where it's going to be in harmonious aspect to Pluto doing its thing in Aquarius. So there is going to be potential for um, harmonizing with that energy of humanitarianism, with Pluto making a nice aspect to Neptune, which Neptune is all about care and nurture of all, right? So there's something here about opportunity here, and I say opportunity because we're going to have Neptune at 0, 1 degree, and 2 degrees of Aries. These are the first degrees of the zodiac, right? Aries is the beginning. It's the birthing. Um, it's the potentiality, right, of starting new things. It's very individual in its expression. However, with that sextile to Pluto and Aquarius, there's something bigger than ego here. And again, Neptune is the planet of egolessness, right? So this is the very beginning of Aries, and generally speaking, if you put Mars there, you put the Sun there, you're talking about an energy, even Jupiter. It's an energy that's very self-focused. But with Neptune being at that early Aries degrees, this is bringing self into selflessness. So what does that mean? Bringing your individual skills and talents and abilities into the realm of that which is egolessness and bigger than individual, right? Doing something that's for a greater purpose, using your individual ego and talents to create something that has a consequence that's not so self-motivated, if that makes sense. So that's interesting in and of itself. Now, what we also are going to have starting, let me get you the exact dates. You can see I didn't prepare anything, just kind of shooting from the hip. So, once we get into late May, from late May until we get to right around, well, through the end of August, from late May through the end of August, we're also going to have Saturn at that early degrees of Aries. So isn't this interesting? Both Saturn in Aries and Neptune in Aries, right there at the beginning of the zodiac, 0 degrees. Saturn's only going to go to Saturn's only going to 1 degree, so Neptune will go to 2 degrees, Saturn will go to 1 degree, and they'll be there together in the very beginning of Aries. Um, they will both of them be in 2025. They will both be at 0 degrees. Will they be at 0 degrees? I don't. They may not be at 0 degrees together at the same time. Not in 2025. That'll be in 2026. Anyway, still the very early degrees of Aries, beginning of Aries together. Now Saturn doesn't like Aries. Saturn is in detriment in Aries. It's not its favorite sign because Aries is all about act before thinking. Me first, let's do it. See it, go get it. Like I'm number one, especially the early degrees of Aries. It's just 1 degree. It's going to be hanging out right at 1 degree, 0 degrees of Aries. This is like here I am, right? Like, and so Saturn is not the planet of me. For Saturn is whereas early Aries is about busting out. It's like the seedling, like get out of my way. I'm coming through, right? Saturn is the sort of stoplight or the stop sign that says, "Whoa, wait, hold it." Like we have some customs and rules and traditions and some uh, hierarchy of authority. We have some conditions. We have some boundaries here, right? So, as you can see, Saturn doesn't really like the early degrees of Aries because, how do you start something and create a new um, and come onto the scene with pure potentiality, with the past and structure coming through in a very defined way, as Saturn will. So, there's some interesting energy here. Ultimately, I see this between, especially with Neptune and Saturn, coming together in nice harmony with Pluto in Aquarius. I see this as the merger of the past and the present, merger of what works, what has tried and true results, and while at the same time making way for the new and the improved and the advancement, right? Because new and improved and change and difference, how do I say it? New and improved and transformational change and revolution in a way is coming on a collective level, but there is this energy here that is really asking us to get very discerning about how we go about it, right? How we implement this into our own lives. Like how do we take what is collectively in front of us and apply it to our own lives in a way that is makes sense. I mean, Saturn is going to be very practical, whereas Neptune is going to be very ethereal, right? So they're there together. It's a fascinating conversation. These planets are very, very different, both in that early degree of fire. So there is this um, opportunity to make real and to make tangible that which is intangible or unreal or ethereal, that which is only a notion. which is maybe a castle in the sky. How do we ground that and put in a foundation, right? Something that can be built upon for the next 29 years if we look at the Saturn cycle, right? So it's almost like with Saturn going to Aries and starting the zodiac all over again for itself at 0 degrees of Aries and Neptune being close by, it's almost like, okay, we have the downloads, we have the greater vision beyond our own personal uh, small-minded selves. We have the greater vision, the collective vision. Um, how are we going to set this up? How are we going to set it up right so it can last and can have some staying power, right? Very, very fascinating energies coming through here. Um, so there's those and both of those planets heading into their new domiciles for a good period of times. Pluto is going to be in Aquarius for 20 years. Neptune will be in Aries for let's see, about that long. I didn't do the exact calculation, but it'll be in Aries for a good while. So don't worry about it. It's going to be there for a long time. So Pluto is in Aquarius, and it's not going back to Capricorn. Neptune is dipping its toe into Aries in 2025. It will go back to that final degree of Pisces, and so there will be some touching up, and um, there will be some returning to the final degree of Pisces, which has to do with the greater collective and dissolution of boundaries and universal compassion and unconditional love. So there's this. We're going to be making it, even though we may want to get off on the front foot with that Aries energy. Both Saturn and Neptune are going to be coming back and saying, "Look, before we head off there, let's make sure that this is good for all of us, not just some of us, right? That this is the energy here." And so I think once we get into the latter part of 2025, there's going to be some maybe recalibration about, okay, well, we had these really great, awesome ideas that are on the front foot, but let's account for everything here. Let's not get too far ahead of ourselves. So that's that, and then we have the last piece of the puzzle here, which is Uranus, which in 2025, once we get into August of 2025, is going to head into Gemini. Okay, so what we're talking about with these energies and their new places where they're going to be for the long term, Uranus is going to be in Gemini for 7.5 years. So these are good big swaths of time here. So with the all of these energies in nice communication with one another by degree and by sign, they're all in harmony. Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, even Saturn. These are the outer planets that have a lot of collective consequence. They're not so personal. They feel personal when they are interacting with the natal chart in a certain ways. And so for everybody, this manifestation is going to be different. But collectively speaking, as a whole, there is some harmony. There's some potential for some real progress, for um, you could call it for some harmonic convergence here. So anyway, so we have Uranus going into Gemini. It's a very fast energy. Uranus has been in Taurus, and though the ancients never wrote about the outer planets because they weren't necessarily aware of them in the way that we are now, you know, they didn't have the traditional um, dignities that we call, like Saturn has planet signs that it likes. Jupiter has signs that it likes. The Sun, Mars, they all have signs that they like and dislike and do well in. This is all, uh, you know, ancient Greek astrology, right? And even further back, there were dignities here. But with when it comes to the outer planets, we sort of this energy is relatively new newer. And so, we kind of, look at the short history of these plants being known and where they've been, and we can kind of look at, and project where we think these plants do best. And so Uranus, just by definition, has a hard time in Taurus because Taurus is fixed Earth. And if there's anything that Uranus is not, it's fixed and immovable and solid. Uranus is compared to lightning. It's fast, sudden, ingenious like change. It's unpredictable. It can be very upsetting because it can bring change in an instant. It can leapfrog time. And so when I think of Uranus, I think of it just as lightning. Its whole purpose of Uranus is to liberate from the bonds of the past and become more of an individualized self-expression for each of us. Now that's not very fixed Earth. That's it can be worked with, and people that have a lot of Taurus energy, and all of us to some extent, we've been working with Uranus and Taurus and learning how to make our material circumstances to set that up in ways that it's much more liberating for our personal self-expression. So anyway, that energy is leaving Taurus and moving into Gemini. Gemini is the sign of the twins. It's air sign. It's mutable air. Has a lot to do with communication. Has a lot to do with details. Has a lot to do with shifting and changing and a multitude of perspective. It is duality. It's a little of this. It's a little of that. It's a more superficial energy. It's a more touch and go type of energy. It's very social. Can be very fun, very chatty. So Uranus here is going to have a lot of fast movement because Gemini is a very fast energy. Gemini doesn't get stuck. Gemini will skip over the top. Think of a stone skipping on water. Gemini just keeps going. And so with Uranus here, there's going to be a lot of, I do believe there's going to be a lot of insights, growth, evolution, revolution in the way that we communicate and technology. I mean, if we look at it here with Pluto in Aquarius, and we have Neptune and Saturn not causing any blockage from Aries, and then we have Uranus in the sign of Gemini. This screams AI, right? This next 7.5 years, I think, is going to be the time where, as far as artificial intelligence is concerned, this is when we pack the most punch potentially. I think things are going to be looking very different technologically 7.5 years from now than they do now. I mean, that's obvious, right? But I do think it's being spelled out in the astrology as well. Yeah, with Uranus being coming into to Gemini there, just a lot of things moving a lot faster. I think things that maybe used to take months, years, decades are going to take days, months, and weeks, right? I think things are just going to speed up in a way that is potentially very beneficial in large part because the outer planets are not uh, compromising one another. They're not, fighting with one another. They're not at war with one another. I mean, let's keep in mind we had a long stint of Uranus uh, Uranus square to Pluto. That was like 2011 to 2018, where it was going back and forth in square, which is aspect of tension. And then in 2020 we had Pluto and Saturn getting together in a direct conjunction. We had Mars going over that, and it was that was a mess. And so and then we've had Saturn and Uranus go square to one another since then. So we've had some stuff we've been dealing with for a while from these outer planets, some real collective turmoil that it is caused by design. That's what these planets do. They've really mixed things up. They've really churned. So I think we're entering a period right now where we have potential to really get on some solid footing and to not have to be watching our back at every step because, who knows what tomorrow brings. I think things may get a little clearer That doesn't mean it's going to be um, great for everyone everywhere all the time, because however this is affecting your personal natal chart is going to speak a lot about if this is going to be beneficial for you. But for the most part, this looks is looking pretty clean for the next few years. And it's just we're just going to be dealing with the day-to-day personal energies of Jupiter, Mars, uh, Jupiter, Mars, Venus, Mercury, the sun, the moon, the eclipses, that kind of thing, which is a little more day to day, and a little more personal, and affecting us in a more kind of more personal way because it looks like the template for the collective circumstances are a little more defined, if that makes any sense. So anyway, as I'm looking at this and as I'm communicating it to you, I'm feeling pretty hopeful about what is possible. So hopefully you share that too, and hopefully you can build upon these energies that are coming forth for the next few years. All right, that's what I got, and I hope to see all of you on the next video.